take us boating. We're going to go out on little fishing boats and have a couple of little gentlemen in the boat, either pulling in their catch. I call this one the catch. And so we're going to look at the finished composition and see where we're headed for today. As you can see, we're going to try to capture just some still water. It's quite an impressionistic painting. It has some nice birds and it has a lot of nice reflections in the water. And it's not a real difficult painting to do. So we should have a lot of fun going through this one. What we're going to do is go up to the canvas and I'll tell you what I've done to prepare for this painting. I've already traced onto the painting with a tracing, and I used graphite paper and transferred my drawing. Now I have a shirt on that even has sailboats in it, and you could put a sailboat in this, whatever would be your preference as to the type of boat that you want. We'll set the mood or set the stage for this composition, and there's not a strong horizon, there's not a lot of strong movements or action in this particular painting, but we're going to keep a little bit of movement in the foreground water, a nice sail on this one. It looks very still, there's not a lot of wind, and let's see what we can do to capture this. I applied on the canvas with my large 2.5-inch brush, I applied a thin coating of basic white. This basic white will enable me to move more quickly and continue painting wet on wet. I went right over my drawing, and what enabled me to go over my drawing, if you come up real close on the canvas, you can see the pencil lines are kind of weak up here, but they're a little stronger in here. After I had transferred my pattern, I used a fixative to set this drawing so that it wouldn't smudge. So when I brush with my brush, it will not disturb my drawing. So it comes through the thin basic coat white. I didn't put a lot of white down here where the little gentlemen are because I'm going to work around that area. The sail and everything I will brush straight over with my background colors, and that'll keep the painting flowing. If you want to use an art appeal or a cutout to protect your drawing, you can, but it's not always necessary. This one, because it's impressionistic, it will work even better and flow more smoothly if I don't have the art appeal. So these are options that you have in any of your paintings. Let's go down to the palette now with a large 2.5-inch brush and start setting the stage. We're going to take in some basic white and a little tiny tickle of yellow ochre. Now ochre is going to put a little warmth to the painting, and when I get into the blues it'll give it a little greenish cast. But I want to take a little tickle on the brush that already has the basic in it that I've applied on the canvas, has a little residue left, and put a little glow. Let's go up to the canvas and just randomly put a soft toning of this glow. We'll even go over the drawing. As you can see, it still shows through, and put a nice flow of color. This will help put a little warmth in the painting. I think I'll kind of stagger it, not just 1, 2, 3, but as you can see, I'm letting it melt into the basic white, and we need a little bit more right over here in the bottom left-hand corner. I think I'll even strengthen and get a little bit more paint, a little touch more ochre, and make that even a little richer, right down here in the bottom left-hand corner. So you can see a thin coating worked into the basic on the canvas. Now let's go down and start introducing the blue. You don't want to get too dark too quick, so what I'll do is I'll keep a little basic into my brush, even though I have it on the canvas, and put little bits of blue and work that in. The ochre that's left in the brush will give it a little bit of a greenish cast. Not quite a cerulean type of a blue, but it's nice and soft. It's a little cooler blue than the Prussian straight by itself. So I now have it worked into the brush, and I'll start working in the white areas. Again, going right over my drawing. I still have a faint design that I can follow. Intermingling back into the last color so that I have a soft effect that kind of peeks through. So don't be afraid to work your colors together a little bit. The first color put on the canvas will grab the canvas better, and it'll carry through the other color that goes on top. So I can go over it because the ochre has a better foothold, and the blue will just cover it up depending on how much I put on top of it. Okay, we need to get darker, so back to the palette. A little more blue on the brush. Not as much basic this time, and if I want to keep that little greenish cast, always bring a little tickle of that ochre into the blue. You don't want to change the colors too much in all your paintings, and since this is impressionistic, we'll keep that flow of color going fairly nice. Let's go up underneath the boat a little bit with a little more strength of color. Work into the basic. You remember you can go over your design. Even though there's no protective design there, I can still see a faint illusion to follow. Okay, just soft colors. This is very pastel in its effect. Even if I go over the people in the boat, I still have my design showing through. Okay, down on the bottom and start getting a coating of this one tone. large sweeping strokes, just color. So I have a kind of a flow of light that filters through this particular area. If you want to strengthen it or put more action, you can start stirring the brush or rotating the brush. I think I'll even add a little more color and show you how to put just a little bit of a movement to the sky. Not distinctive clouds, just little swirls of color. Just stir the brush on its corner. I'd kind of tilt the handle. I have to kind of get in your way a little bit to angle the handle to the ceiling. Or I guess I could use the bottom corner and just swirl a little movement. You can see a little more activity beginning to be distinguished. A little even bluer in here. We want some good contrast around the sail. The sail needs to stand out with the white, so we want to build a little extra dark right in this area. So pick up a little more pigment. Come back to the canvas and work right in there. You can see I'm purposely working that a little stronger. Okay. I think that's just enough to set the stage or set the mood of the painting. And again, because I didn't use the art appeal or the protective coating for my drawing, I can still have such a thin coating on there that I can see my design. So that's kind of an option you'll have to make a decision on. I think I'm going to go to a fan brush so I can start maybe making a little movement in the water, a little more activity. We'll use the fan, clean and dry, and go down to our mixing spot, maybe a little basic. Keep these paints moving easily, and mix up some more of that blue and a touch of ochre, just a little darker, and put a little more activity in the foreground water. Now I'm going to hold the brush horizontal and just put a little bit of a zigzag swiggle type stroke down in the foreground to suggest some movement in the water. I'm going to be doing this with browns and other colors later, but again I'm trying to guide your eye up into the painting as I make some kind of movements down in the water. The fan brush has a tendency to blend it also as it's working. We'll even darken the water as a little shadow underneath. I want a little more color into the sail, so I'm going to even pull a few little streak lines down through the sail to give me a little more foundation that I can put the white on top of. That's going to help support that white coloring. Sometimes I even gray these colors a little, maybe a slight movement for a horizon. I don't really want a distinctive one. If I get too much, it's very easy just to wipe the brush on a paper towel and then just kind of mix it in a little more. Nothing too distinct. Use the full width of the brush if you want to dissolve out some of the activity. There we go. You can also do that with a clean fan brush and do it with a little white if you want a little more light play on the surface of the water. I'm going to use titanium for this and go back up to the canvas. And the reason I'm using titanium right in here is because the titanium grabs a little better. Your basic will go on a little more fluid, and right through the heart of the painting I'm going to put a little bit of a glimmer. Now we'll do that with a liner again, but I want to keep a little more interest in the center of the painting. Not too much going on the edges. We have a boat that we need to work on, the two structures, and I think I'm going to go ahead and we'll work from the top down. Now I could start on the boat, start on the people, each way would work, but I think I'm going to start with the mast and get the mast in there first, and then we will go ahead and build the sail and then the people. So each structure, I find capturing this detail of that mast is very important. Rulers are helpful. If you can't draw a straight line, make sure you put one on there with a ruler. I'm going to use just some burnt umber, little Van Dyke in it, load it up on the edge of my blade, kind of steady myself on the canvas, and just kind of touch and walk right up that mast. Sometimes I just slide it. Just move that paint right up and get that blocked in. Using the straight edge of the knife, sometimes you can press quite firmly and push that up even taller than my design was. Just cut it right into there, and it's just like you make a top on a treetop. There's also a cross boom or a bar that holds the sail up. I'm not sure what exactly type boat this is, but it depicts a crossbar that holds up the sail. That gives me that straight edge line now blocked in. For the boat, I'm going to block it in with some browns of just burnt umber. Using a number 16, clean and dry, we'll go down to the palette, use a very little amount of paint of burnt umber, come back up, and we'll find the bow and just kind of block in the inside. Now the sail is overlapping the boat, so there's a straight edge bar down here at the bottom. I'll paint that with a liner later. But I want to get the areas behind the gentleman, There's some areas underneath their arm. And just get the inside of the boat blocked in with a light color. A little light going inside that boat. While I have that color on my brush, let's go to your left and we'll come over to the smaller boat and we'll see if we can block in that with just a little bit of color. If you go over your designs, don't worry because you should have a reference picture or painting. Maybe you can see the reference picture I have up on your screen, and you will be able to follow and replace things. If you lose a little object, then you can replace it. Okay, let's go in with a little darker value. We're going with more Van Dyke in the brush. And back to the canvas, and let's find the front side or the more shadowed side of the brush. And I'm just stroking down along the front edge. And if you look at the finished painting, you'll see why I'm putting the front edge on the boat. Also in this one, we have a foreshortened side, and that color is not enough contrast. Let's go back down and darken that. We need better contrast to separate the inside of the boat to the back side. So let's go back in with some more blue into the brown. That'll darken it farther. Pull it up, and the number 16 works very well to find that edge. And it stops right about here. We have the back of the boat, and we're going to lighten that back of the boat a little more. Pull that mast back in. We want to, while we have this paint on the brush, darken underneath there for maybe a little reflection. And I'm working this with kind of a sliding motion. And the brush softens it in. We'll come back with stronger illusions on top of this, but I like to build a little more slowly. Here's a little over on the smaller boat. And we'll underline it just a little for its reflection. And then because there's activity in the water, we want to break it up just a little bit. So we just kind of, we don't want to call it muddy up the water, we reflect in the water. If you come back on the painting, take it in more as a whole, I think you'll see that in the finished painting we have some activity down here on the bottom. And we want to capture some of those browns and some of that movement underneath the darks here to kind of help support this full painting. And then we'll go back in and we'll build again and again. Again, adding paint gradually as we progress through the painting. The number 16 is very handy to do this because it mixes, but the fan brush is very effective also. So either brush would do the job of putting these little movements or activities in the water. Let's go lower on the canvas here and see if we can get a few of these little swoops and swirls and little activity movements for reflections in the water. Just some interest. Really, there's not anything reflecting, there's nothing specific here, but it helps finish that interest in the painting. Maybe there's another boat we're sitting on that has a bow out or something. Really doesn't have to depict anything because it's more of a supportive illusion. Also makes a nice place for me to sign my name if I have time today. Okay, we need more darks up here in the front. I also, at this stage, can reflect that mask that comes down through the reflection in the water. I'm going to use a little bit of my thinner on a liner, and let's see if we can just get that reflected just a little bit, come directly beneath the object, and start breaking the line as you kind of wiggle down and have it broken, not a straight line, because there is movement in the water. You don't want to depict that as being ironed out or stiff. With the liner, I'm going to find the back end of the boat. You can even go over your lines. Maybe you need to outline it to help you find your design and find your basic structure. That's very helpful to do. Okay, we'll have to go back down to the palette and use a little bit more of the brown, and maybe I'll find some other interesting points to put in. The people are going to be the last thing in the boat. There is a base bar here that I'm going to put in later with a few strokes of the liner, but I want to get the sail done first so I don't bump into that and have a dirty sail. So maybe there's a few little movements or activities going into the boat, and maybe we'll soften a little color in the back of the boat. I'm using my finger. That's a brush everybody has. Find the back end. A little bit of a reflection movements. So the liner allows me to put the paint on a little darker and richer on top of that softened look. I need a little more paint on the brush. Back up to the canvas. Underneath here, darker, richer movements. See how much tighter it comes when you get with a smaller brush? These are just activity things that are happening on the surface of the water. We're going to bring the color of the red of the shirt, and we'll bring all those down. Maybe while we have this brush loaded, we'll just bring in a little suggestion of a rope holding it in on this one too. Edge one of the boats. Right now I'm just going through a few little motions. We're over in the smaller boat and getting an idea. There's maybe a couple of seats in there, the little guy that's going to be in this one is going to be kind of leaning forward, working with something. So I can edge and line boats and begin to create a lot of different movements. I think we need to go up and work on the sail for a moment. I'm going to use a fan brush to do that. Now, if the number 16 gives you more control, that's fine, but I want to take a clean, dry fan brush and just sweep some color right on top. I want it to be fairly strong, so if I've got enough darks on there, I should be in good shape. If not, I'll put them back. I'm going to titanium white. And I'm putting quite a bit of paint on the brush, both sides, and I'm going to come up to the canvas, and I'm just going to catch where the sail is and just kind of use the corner and streak some lines down, just to bring in an indication of movements in that sail. I don't have to worry about putting a lot of hard lines because I want to keep some of that blue in there. So I'm reloading the brush again, come back up, and just use the edge of it to get a tighter edge close to the mast. Just kind of scuffle the canvas or barely grab the canvas. If I don't have enough contrast, if I find it's not that strong an illusion on that edge, I'll try putting a stroke of white in there like this, a little heavier paint to strengthen it, to find that edge. But then I can also take the brush, go back down to my sky color, and watch how I can make that look even lighter by going in with a little darker color and painting the background a little stronger, and then blending out to it. So you can go back and add and strengthen colors, and that helps that edge of that sail a little more distinctive. So building contrast is an important thing that you need to go back to. We need to do a little detail work up at the top of the sail. There seems to be rings or little lines that connect to it, and we want to capture those in here. I'm using some of my sky color rather than the brown right now, and I'm going to find the top edge, or kind of a shadowed edge, of the sail to help frame it in. A few little lines down vertically help me find it, but there's little rings and wires, and we'll use a little brown for that. Picking up just a little brown, I'm going to tap just a few little movements on the top, like they're little rings, and bring them right down to the sail, as if that's what's holding that sail up. That helps create a little bit of interest there. Maybe there's a rope or a guideline wire. You could put different types of sailboats. We need to strengthen this line here just a little bit. Bringing on out as a heavier bar that extends beyond the sail creates a little more interest. So your liner is something, if you come down just a little farther, you can go in and strengthen the mast. And we'll put even other colors on the mast. So each step builds the painting. Let's see if we can work a little bit on the gentleman, get them blocked in, and then we can work more on our lights and our darks and develop the form and structure. I like a block in done first, and I guess we'll just give them different colored shirts. Red's a great contrasting color and creates a lot of activity. So down on the palette, I'll pick up some red, and maybe this little fellow's got a red shirt, so I pull an arm down and give him a little bit of a rounded shape, and I can still faintly see my guide. If I couldn't see my guide, I could always reuse a reference picture. This little guy's leaning into the painting also. Now, we might not want him to have the same color shirt. Change the color a little bit. Add some yellow to the red, or maybe even add some alizarin. I like to use the alizarin to create more of the shadow, because if this is under his arm, you really have to come in tight to see this, you want to darken underneath there, and so that gives it a little more form. Maybe up a little dark around his neck. Now, he can be blonde, brunette, redhead. That's always up to the painter. That's one of those choices we have to make. I usually, against a light surface, I choose a dark colored hair for better contrast, or he could have had a dark hat on. So we'll go in and we'll just give him the back of his head and just tap a little dark. It's nothing more than a little circle there. And if it gets a little big, he's just got a big head of hair. That's an easy one out of that one. I might on this one, because I have enough blue, I might make him a blonde. Let's go in with a little more darks. And we'll just tap in, maybe he's got on brown pants. Right now he's just a suggestion. I'll take a little blue, a little more Prussian, into the other object. And let's go over here and the smaller, well, we'll work over here for a minute. We'll finish this shirt. And we'll give him a block in, and we need to get darks and lights in there. And darker jeans. We'll just go down and pick up some pure Prussian. Prussian blue back up here, and we'll give him a dark coloring for his pants. There we go. So luckily he looks almost like he's sitting on the edge of that boat. Let's come over to the other side for just a moment and take this one and give him a little indication of some dark in here. Wipe the brush and just soften it in just a little. Remember, this is a foundation tone, and you can always go back and rework. we need to finish the heads, let's make one of them a blonde, just for fun. I like to use yellow ochre as my base tone on a blonde. Sometimes I even use brown, but let's tap a little yellow ochre up on the shape of this one's head. And I left a little area where maybe I'll put a touch of flesh color for his face, and then I'll come over to the other one and maybe touch a little ochre for a highlight, and yet we'll make this one a brunette. It's because I'm going to put a yellow on the other one, and I use usually two colors. Two colors are sufficient to create a interesting effect. Okay, we're coming back up and we're working on detail. This is going to, again, have a darker color. And so that little bit of ochre I left on the top, well, already he seems to have a little highlight, a little coloring. Let's put some things in the boat. Now, these are the fun things to put in because you can suggest all sorts of things. They're tackle boxes, fishing rods, and just all sorts of different colored objects in the boat because there's always usually, it's got to pack a lunch. We can put a little movement in there and just little dibbles and dabbles and, oh, I'm not sure what all he's got in the boat. It's obvious he's got a lot of things, but I'm going to just create some movements. Now I can go back in here and find that baseline of that crossbar there and start building in some other things that are happening. Even the blue of that painting could almost be like a light on his sleeve. I think we need to bring in some more light on the back of the boat. How about a light tan using burnt umber and basic, and put a little more warmth to it by adding a touch of ochre. So I mixed up a different color. Sometimes I use pinks. This is a warmer, lighter tone that I can have on the back of the boat. Sometimes a warm red was nice. So I'm just going to find the back edge, tap it in, and I think you can see how that works pretty well. Maybe run a rim on the edge of the boat and find that contour there. You can almost see the bow of the boat up in there, and maybe you want to detail more in there. There's a lot of things going up into there, and you don't have to distinguish every little movement, but by creating contrast and different values, you'd be amazed at the character or the interest that you can create. Maybe just a little on that edge on the other side, find the peak of the bow of the boat, and then maybe that front seam line that comes down inside the boat. Even a little rope that comes from the bow and heads up to the mast line. Now that's a little heavy, so I'll touch it with my finger, lift off the extra paint, and I'll put it in a little better. Just a little bit more, less paint on the brush. I got that a little thin, and so I just want to find that little bow line, and now he's a little bit more delicate. Okay, let's look at see how we can do some nice birds. Birds add a wonderful accent to this, and a little more activity on the water. I think basic white is one of the most important things that I use to finish off some detail. I'll start with just basic white and come bring some more water movement on the brush, on the surface of the canvas. This is straight basic white, and I'm going to come in and continue that pattern of those little action lines, just kind of a, not quite a smile stroke or a rocking chair stroke, it's kind of a flat line, but it does create some more activity. And I'm just sweeping across the canvas and letting it barely grab. I need to go down and reload when I see it breaking. That means I need a little more paint on there. And again, create some more activity. Maybe a little glint of light right up at the bow. Just a little kick of light to create a movement on the far side of the boat. And I go right over those browns. So these are things that can be worked. I think we need some kind of movement in the sky. Let's go down to the palette because I really want to show you how I'm going to double load this brush to make a nice structured bird. Let's come down to some of our blue sky color and add a little bit of brown and lots of thinner. I don't know if you can tell how much thinner. I've got a nice big puddle here on my palette. The brown grays the blue, and this is a little too soupy, but I make it darker than I want for the birds. I actually go a little darker in my mixture, make a nice big puddle to play in. Don't run short of paint because then you run out. But then I'll take a little of my basic, which has a little more body, and I'll mix it in there, and I should get a nice bluish gray. And that's the color I was looking for. I overload my brush by scooping up as much paint as I can into the brush, and just roll that brush, and then I'm going to come over to the basic white, and with the edge of the brush, I'm going to slide a little beyond the paint and slide a number 1 all the way down through the white. Now if you come up to the canvas really close, you'll see that the brush has 2 colors on it. It has a dark and it has a light. White on one side, dark on the other. And I'm going to tilt that, and I'm going to go in. I have to put my hand up just a little bit, but I'm going to use the tip, and I'm going to get a two-tone bird that has a nice movement to him. And the white comes off on one edge. If you lose the load, you need to come back and reload the brush. There's a little excess white that's beginning to droop over there. So I just wipe the brush, go down, drag through the dark side, to the light side again, and maybe put a few other birds in there. Always putting the light to the ceiling. So lots of birds activity make a lot of nice accents. A few tips on the wings and a signature, and I think we can call this one finish. Sometimes I pull down on the wings, I pull up on the wingtips. I hope you've enjoyed this one and going boating today, and you're working your oils and practice. You need to practice a lot. Thanks for joining me today. See you again.